I found her in the game, not the woman I loved, but the one she used to betray me, pixel by pixel. It started with the quiet. Not silence, that's different. Silence is peaceful. What we had was a kind of void, the absence of words that used to live between our routines. Words like, dinner's ready, or, how was your day? Now there was only the faint mechanical hum from her studio upstairs, and the cool blue light of her monitors flickering against the hallway wall long after midnight. My wife, Eliza, is a game developer. And not just any kind. She builds VR worlds that people disappear into for days, sprawling online realms where players can be whoever they want, love whoever they choose, and live lives more thrilling than anything real. We used to joke that her job was selling dreams. But lately, it felt more like she'd been buying into one herself. We've been married for 9 years. No kids, not for lack of trying, but life just didn't swing that way for us. We had a rhythm, though. Morning coffee together, dinner on the couch, lazy Sundays with books or old movies. Simple. Real. Until she started working on the garden. That was the name of her new VR project. An open-world adult RPG, something she called, emotional escapism redefined. At first, I was proud. She was leading her own team, had investors, even got a feature in Wire. I supported her. I believed in her. But over time, Eliza began slipping away. She moved her entire workstation into the spare bedroom and converted it into what she called her immersion lab. The door was always shut now. I'd hear muffled laughter through the walls, conversations too natural to be scripted, and sometimes, music. Soft and intimate. At dinner, she'd bring her plate upstairs and say she had debugging to do. I'd sit alone, listening to the echo of silverware on my own plate. Even when she wasn't in the headset, her eyes would glaze over like she was still inside. I chalked it up to stress. Startups devour time. I told myself this was temporary, that once the beta launched, she'd come back to me. We just had to get through the tunnel. But the tunnel kept getting longer. The only times she seemed animated anymore were when she talked about her AI narrative systems, these deep emotional dialogue trees she was designing. They're learning, she told me once, her eyes alight in a way I hadn't seen in months. They remember, adapt, even fall in love. I remember laughing and saying, just don't let one steal your heart. She didn't laugh back. One night, I brought up the idea of taking a weekend trip. Just the two of us. No tech, no deadlines, just air, stars, and maybe the feeling of skin instead of plastic. Her response. I can't. We're doing a soft launch. Besides, it's not like we have anything to talk about lately. That sentence didn't come out like a jab. It came out like a diagnosis. I stared at her then, really stared. Her eyes were tired, but there was something else, a dullness. As if her real life had become background noise, and the only time she felt alive was behind those lenses. I tried to reach her, in little ways. Made her favorite meals. Left notes by her keyboard. Suggested we watch old sci-fi movies, the ones we fell in love over. She nodded politely each time. But her headset always won. Then, one night, I brought her a cup of tea and opened the door without knocking. I wasn't trying to spy, I just missed her. Needed her. But what I saw on the monitor stopped me cold. A female avatar, tall, ethereal, with Eliza's unmistakable face and voice, sat by a glowing riverbank. She was laughing, flirtatiously brushing virtual hair behind her ear, her digital body shimmering under moonlight. Across from her sat another avatar. Male. Strong-jawed, dark-eyed. The kind of character you'd design if you wanted to feel protected. Desired. And then she said it, or her voice did. I wish you were real. I didn't breathe. The male voice responded, low and tender. You don't need real. You've got me. I set the tea down and left before she noticed me. My hands were shaking. Not because of what I saw, but because I wasn't sure what I saw. Was it just scripted interaction? A test line? Or something else? Something real enough to her? That night, Eliza didn't come to bed. The next morning, I asked her about the avatar, the one that looked like her. She gave me a breezy explanation, just testing adult interactions. AI plus user emotion parsing. It's market research. I nodded. But inside me, something cracked. Because she didn't say, that wasn't me. And she didn't say, don't worry, it's just work. She just smiled like nothing mattered anymore outside the screen. And that's when I began to understand, I wasn't losing her to another man. I was losing her to another version of herself. The first time I heard her moan in that headset, I told myself it was just sound design. A pre-recorded loop. Audio testing. Nothing more. But it wasn't just a sound. It was a breathy, raw thing, familiar in a way that twisted my stomach. I stood frozen outside the door, the cup of tea shaking in my hands again. Her laugh followed, lighter than I'd heard it in months. Then a man's voice, warm, teasing. You always make me smile, Elira. Elira. Not Eliza. It was close enough to sting. That night, I waited until she passed out on the couch, headset still tangled in her curls, lips parted like she'd fallen asleep mid-sentence. I crept into the studio, heart punching inside my ribs. The monitor was still running. Her avatar, Elira, lay curled in what looked like a bed of digital moss, breathing softly beneath a shimmering night sky. A campfire flickered nearby, and across it sat him. Nick's wolf. His name hovered over his head like a badge of ownership. His avatar was handsome, rugged in a cinematic, stylized way. And the way he looked at her, even in pixels, felt intimate. Possessive. A text bubble appeared on screen. I'm falling for you harder every day, Elira. Then hers. Don't fall. Stay. The next morning, I made eggs. Her favorite, over medium, touch of sea salt, chili flakes. I placed them in front of her, waiting for the smile that used to be automatic. She barely looked up. Thanks. And just like that, the eggs went cold between us. That week, I watched the avatar grow more detailed. She'd added freckles to Elira's face. Changed her walk, slower, more feminine. Even gave her a different laugh. It was hers, but, dialed up. Polished. Like Elira was who she wished she could be, and Eliza was the broken upload. I asked her about it casually over dinner. Do players design their own love interests? Or is it all AI generated? She didn't even blink. Depends. Some people want fantasy. Others want mirrors. Either way, we give them what they crave. What do you crave? I asked. She looked up then, and for a second, I saw something behind her eyes. Something wild. Unreachable. Something better. The next turning point was her necklace. A thin silver chain she wore every day. I gave it to her on our 5th anniversary, the year we couldn't afford Paris, so I had it engraved with GPS coordinates of the Airbnb we stayed at in Oregon. You always bring me home, it said on the back. One morning, it wasn't on her neck. I didn't mention it. That afternoon, I found it in the drawer of her desk, shoved under VR prototype gear. When I touched it, it felt colder than metal should. That night, I made a decision. While she was out picking up wine for a virtual team hang, which apparently required heels and lipstick now, I powered on her studio PC. I had no idea what I was looking for. But when I opened the game directory, I found something strange. Not code. Not folders labeled build or assets. But one private save file, locked behind two-factor authentication and labeled simply, Our Garden. It wasn't the main game. This was something else. A personal instance. Custom. Private. I stared at the file for a long time, my cursor hovering over it like a question I wasn't ready to ask. Was I really about to spy on my wife in a virtual world? Was that what this had come to? I walked out of the room. I didn't have the password. But that night, she forgot to log out. And I did it. I went in. I slipped on the headset like a thief. The loading screen bloomed around me, shimmering pixels folding into sky, grass, light. And there she was. Elira. Sitting on a swing in a glade that pulsed like a digital dream. Fireflies floated. Wind whispered through code. Then, him. Nick's wolf. He stepped into the clearing, his avatar glowing faintly in the dusk. And she ran to him. Jumped into his arms. Their bodies pressed together like magnets, no collision glitch, no stutter, just pure, programmed contact. I stood there, unseen, watching my wife become someone else. "Did you miss me?" he asked. "Always," she whispered. Then he took her hand and led her down a path I couldn't follow. But I did. I followed anyway. They say you can't really die in virtual reality. But that night, something in me bled out all the same. The garden was more beautiful than I expected. Ethereal. Artificially perfect, the kind of beauty no real place could ever sustain. Trees glowed faintly at the edges, leaves shimmering like they'd been dipped in moonlight. There was a river, too, with a surface so still it looked like glass stretched tight. I stood at the edge of that riverbank, my borrowed avatar a silent silhouette. Then I heard them. They were sitting together on a bench beneath a glowing tree. Her head rested on his shoulder. He traced circles on her knee with his hand, his virtual hand, but it made no difference. Every movement was coded tenderness. "You look tired," he murmured. She leaned into him. "Real life is draining. I only feel awake when I'm here." My throat tightened. "I hate that you have to go back there every day," he said. To him. She didn't answer immediately. Then. "Sometimes I wish I could delete him like a bad save file." He laughed, a warm, rich sound. "You don't need to stay in that world, Elira. You could build a new one. With me." She looked up at him. "What if I already am?" He kissed her. It wasn't a game animation. It wasn't clunky or robotic. It was slow. Deliberate. Real. And she kissed him back like she meant it. I felt sick. They kept talking after. Plans. Dreams. He told her he wanted to meet, someday, in the flesh. She said she wasn't ready. That reality was messy. That she didn't want to break the spell. But then she whispered. "I've never felt this seen. Not even by him. Him was me." I backed away from the bench like it was on fire. But the fire was inside me now. Further down the path, I discovered something worse. They had a house. A private instance, password protected, but I was already in through her login. A small virtual cottage, tucked behind weeping willows, with warm orange lights glowing through digital curtains. The moment I stepped inside, I heard her laugh again. Not Eliza's laugh. Elira's. Higher. Unburdened. Drunk on fantasy. She stood by a fireplace, barefoot, in a soft white dress. He walked behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, and whispered something I couldn't hear. She turned in his arms, her hands on his chest. Then, slowly, they moved to the rug. Their bodies entangled. Not stiff, robotic motions. This was scripted down to breath cycles, synced moans, customizable speed curves. It was intimate. Crafted. Programmed. But worse, it was chosen. She made this. Line by line. For him. I ripped the headset off. I couldn't breathe. Sweat slicked my skin. My heart felt like it was beating out of rhythm, as if my body knew before my mind could catch up. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was an erasure. I wasn't part of her fantasy anymore. I wasn't even a ghost. Downstairs, the house was still. Too quiet. She wasn't home. Her phone buzzed on the counter. I stared at the screen. A message from a number I didn't know. Tonight was everything. Can't stop thinking about the way you sounded. I locked myself in the bathroom and threw up until there was nothing left. Then I sat on the floor. And for the first time in years, I cried like a child. The next morning, I couldn't look her in the eye. She sat across the table, spooning yogurt into her mouth, eyes flicking lazily through emails on her tablet. Her hair was still damp from the shower. She smelled like rosemary shampoo and a lie. "Did you sleep okay?" she asked, not looking up. Eventually. That was all I said. And all I could say. Because if I said more, the wrong words might spill out. Words like, "Who is Nick's wolf?" or "Why did your avatar cry my name the moment you climaxed?" So instead, I drank my coffee in silence. I let the bitterness coat my tongue like punishment. Later that day, while she was out running errands, real ones, I assumed, I went back in. Not into the cottage. Not into that moment. But into the game's source files. I'm not a developer, but I know my way around directories. I used to build mod kits in college. And if there was one thing I understood, it was that even fantasy leaves footprints. And she had left a trail. The first clue was the dialogue tree. Elira wasn't just an avatar. She was a complex emotional AI, forked from a base character named E. Liza_V7, one she had built off her own voice patterns, decision trees, and biometric data. It wasn't a player character. It was her. And not just a copy, a parallel. She had spent months training this version of herself to respond how she wished she could. Calm where she snapped. Flirtatious where she used to fall silent. Curious instead of guarded. But the worst part? In her AI script logs, I found this line, labeled, Intro. TXT. Hi. I'm Elira. I'm a widow. My husband passed away 5 years ago. I don't talk about him much, the past is too painful. But I believe in second chances. My hands froze on the keyboard. Widow. Not married. Not complicated. Dead. She had killed me in code. I closed the folder and stared at the screen. She had built a version of herself that mourned me, then moved on. In her mind, or at least in that world, I wasn't a person. I was a backstory. A plot device to justify her freedom. And Nick's wolf? He wasn't a fling. He was her reset. That evening, I watched her again. This time from a monitoring window. I'd installed tracking software that mirrored her headset feed in real time. It was like watching a secret life through a digital peephole. She was in the garden again. But Elira wasn't laughing this time. She was crying. On a bench near the river, head in her hands. Nick's wolf sat beside her, one arm around her shoulder. "I feel so guilty," she said, voice shaking. "You don't have to," he whispered. "You built this world to escape. That means something. I didn't build it to lie." He pulled her closer. "You didn't lie. You told the version of the truth that let you breathe." A pause. Then she looked at him. "If he ever knew what I've said in here, what I've done." "He doesn't have to know," Nick's wolf said softly. "He's not here. I was. I heard every word. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt hollow. Because it wasn't a man who stole my wife. It was her. A better version of herself. A freer, braver version. One who didn't roll her eyes at jokes or flinch at touch. One who wanted new beginnings and campfires and hands held under digital stars. She had built someone I could never compete with. And now she was falling in love, not with Nick's Wolf, but with who she could be when I didn't exist. When she came home that night, she brought takeout. Thai food. My favorite. She placed it on the counter, smiled, and said, "Thought you'd had a rough week." I nodded. My mouth said thank you. But in my mind, I was back at that bench by the river. Watching the woman I loved mourn my absence, like it was the best thing that ever happened to her. There's a difference between knowing and seeing. Between suspecting your partner is slipping away and watching them fall, willingly, beautifully, into someone else's arms. I thought I'd already felt the worst of it. Thought the sick weight in my stomach was rock bottom. But then I heard her say it. "I want you," she whispered. It was late. After midnight. She thought I was asleep. But I was in the guest room, headset on, watching her live session like a hidden camera feed. My stomach tight. My hands clammy. On screen, Alira stood by a digital fireplace. The lighting was low, flickering. Her dress, the same soft white one, barely touched her knees now. Barefoot, she paced slowly, nervously. Nick's Wolf was already waiting in the bed behind her. Shirtless. Calm. "You sure?" he asked, voice low. She turned, and for a moment, I saw her. The woman I'd married. The way she used to look at me when she wanted to be touched but didn't want to say it. I've never been more sure. What followed wasn't pornographic. It wasn't rough or graphic or grotesque. It was soft. Tender. Designed. Every motion pre-rendered. Every sigh built into the animation. But she voiced it all. Every breath, every moan, not a sound effect. Her voice. Mapped to the AI. Tracked through the mic, processed and streamed. I watched as she arched her back. As her avatar pressed into his. As she whispered, "Don't stop," in a tone I hadn't heard in years. And worst of all, the thing that truly shattered me, was what came after. They lay there in silence, bodies tangled in pixelated blankets. Then she whispered. "I love you." Not to me. To him. To a man who didn't even exist. I pulled off the headset so fast I nearly cracked the casing. The room spun. The house was silent. Down the hall, I heard the faint hum of her voice, still in the game, speaking softly into that black headset she loved more than anything. I stood there in the dark, fists clenched, breath shallow. I wanted to scream. To rip open the door and drag her out of that false world. But I didn't. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, buried my face in my hands, and whispered the words she would never hear. "I loved you first." In the days that followed, I watched her change. Not outwardly. She still left half-empty coffee mugs around the house. Still used my hoodie when she was cold. Still said, "I'll be back soon," when she left for groceries. But her eyes. They no longer looked tired. They looked fed. Like something inside her had been nourished. Watered. Given light. And I wasn't the one who gave it. I checked the server logs. She was logging in nearly every night. Sometimes for 2 hours. Sometimes for 6. One night, she left her headset running until dawn. The next morning, she made pancakes. She hadn't made pancakes in months. As if sleeping with him, virtually, somehow made her real life sweeter. I watched her drizzle maple syrup across a plate and hum to herself. And all I could think was, she's falling in love in front of me. And I'm still doing the dishes. That night, I finally confronted her, not with words. but with silence. We sat at the dinner table. I stared at her the whole time. She avoided my gaze, picking at her food. Finally, she asked, "What?" I didn't answer. She frowned. "You're acting weird." I let the silence stretch until it felt like a third person at the table. And only then did I say, "Do you love him?" She blinked. The fork froze mid-air. "What?" "In the game," I said. "Do you love him?" She set the fork down. "Don't do this." "Do you?" She stood. "It's not what you think. I think you told him you love him." Her face went pale. And in that moment, I saw everything I needed. She didn't deny it. Didn't lie. Didn't cry. She just walked away. That night, I opened my own headset. Created an account. Built an avatar. And stepped into her world. I was going to see how deep this garden really went. I built my avatar to look nothing like me. Taller. Stronger jaw. No graying hair. No lines around the eyes from years of holding in everything I never said. He looked like the kind of man you'd choose if you wanted to start over. And maybe that's exactly what I needed, a mask, to face the truth. The garden was quiet that night. No music. No laughter. Just the rustling of code-mimicked wine through leaves that had never touched real air. I found them near the river again. She was lying in the grass, her head in his lap. He stroked her hair, slowly, rhythmically, and whispered something I couldn't hear. But she laughed. Softly. With that voice I'd memorized in so many other lifetimes. I approached from the shadows. Close enough to hear her say, "You make me feel like I'm the best version of myself." My hands trembled on the controller. I stepped into the light. They both looked up. Nick's wolf stood protectively, his avatar towering, handsome, threatening. "Do we know you?" he asked. I ignored him. My eyes were on her. "Elira," I said. She froze. Not her avatar, her. Because only I called her that with that tone. The one laced with a decade of love, betrayal, dinners uneaten, glances dodged, anniversaries spent in silence. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I think you know." Her avatar stumbled back, suddenly smaller. "Mike?" She said it like a ghost's name. Like she couldn't believe I still existed. I removed my helmet, virtually. A cosmetic gesture, but one she understood. "You made me a ghost in this world," I said. "But ghosts don't disappear, Eliza. We haunt." Nick's wolf tried to intervene. "Hey, man. This doesn't concern you," I snapped. Then turned back to her. "I watched you build this place. Watched you rewrite yourself, code line by line, into someone who didn't have to remember our life." "I didn't mean," she started. "No." I stepped closer. "You didn't mean to make yourself a widow? Didn't mean to simulate sex in surround sound while I slept in the next room?" She flinched. That alone told me she still had some shred of guilt. "Why him?" I asked. She hesitated. "He listens," she said quietly. "He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't pull away when I speak." I never pulled away. You didn't have to. You disappeared in plain sight. I laughed bitterly. "And what did you do?" "You escaped into a place where I didn't exist. You told a stranger I was dead. That our marriage, our entire history, was just tragic backstory." "I needed space," she said, eyes wet even through the pixels. "You needed permission," I replied. "To fall in love with someone who'd never see the worst of you. Someone you didn't have to face." She was silent. Because silence had always been her weapon when words got too sharp. "I came here to ask why," I said. "But I already know. You stopped loving me the day you realized I could see your cracks. And he only sees the version you let him. Nick's wolf finally spoke again. Whatever's going on here, she's not the villain. She's human. Just like you. I turned to him. Are you? He looked confused. Because you've been in love with a fiction. A woman built on loss she never lived. Mourning a man who's still making her coffee in real life. She told me. She told you what she needed to tell herself, I interrupted. She built this whole place to pretend she didn't destroy the one thing that ever loved her without code. Eliza, I said, softer now. This was never just a game. I know, she whispered. Do you love him? She hesitated. Then. I don't know. That hurt more than a yes. Because it meant she was still deciding. Still weighing it. Still, in it. I stepped back. Then I'll make the decision easier. I pulled up the system menu. Opened the player list. Hovered over my name. And clicked delete character. Her avatar screamed. Mike, wait, don't. But I was already gone. Her world faded. And mine, finally, began. When I deleted my avatar, the silence that followed wasn't digital. It was real. It was the kind that follows explosions. The kind that hangs in the air when something permanent has been broken, and nobody rushes to clean it up. She didn't speak to me that night. Didn't knock on my door. Didn't text. Just stayed upstairs in her studio, headset off, screen dark, no sound. No code. No lies. Just nothing. The next morning, the dishes were still in the sink. I made coffee like I always did, half for me, half for her. Out of habit. Not hope. But her mug stayed full and untouched, the surface going cold before she even came downstairs. When she did, she was wearing the old hoodie I thought she'd thrown away. The one with the paint stain on the sleeve. The one she wore the night we built our first IKEA bookshelf and laughed about getting divorced over wooden pegs and bad instructions. She looked like someone coming back from a long trip and realizing the house was smaller than they remembered. I didn't look at her. She didn't look at me. We just stood in the same kitchen, as if the walls between us weren't plaster and paint, but silence. 3 days passed. No confrontation. No screaming. No begging. She never said she was sorry. And maybe that hurt more than anything else. Because there's a kind of betrayal where the other person still tries to win you back. And then there's this. The kind where they don't even know what side they're on anymore. I thought maybe she'd go back into the garden. But she didn't. Not once. I know because I checked the logs. The private instance, our garden, sat dormant, untouched, unvisited. Her digital self had stopped breathing. Or maybe she just couldn't face what she built anymore. A dream she could no longer live in. Not now that I died inside it. On the 5th day, I came home from work and found her headset lying on the kitchen table. Neatly wrapped cords. Wiped clean. Beside it was the silver necklace I'd given her, the one with the GPS coordinates on the back. I picked it up. Ran my thumb across the inscription. You always bring me home. She left no note. No explanation. Just the things that once meant something. And now meant nothing at all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for a noise that never came, the soft creak of her footsteps upstairs, the door to her studio clicking shut, the faint hum of fabricated paradise. But the house was still. Too still. So around 2 a.m., I got up. Sat at the desk. And for the first time in days, I opened the garden. Just to see. Just to feel. When the world loaded, it was raining. Something she must have coded recently. A quiet drizzle fell across the glade, collecting in shallow puddles on the stone paths. The trees wept. The sky flickered gray. And there she was. Elira. Her avatar, still active, still idle, sitting alone on the swing by the river. She wasn't moving. Just rocking slightly, head down, knees tucked to chest. And beside her? Nothing. No Nyx wolf. No flame. No illusions. Just her. Crying. Digitally. Silently. Alone. I didn't log in. I didn't walk toward her. I just watched from the edge. Because I knew this moment wasn't for me anymore. It wasn't for him either. It was for her. Her grief. Her ruin. The fantasy had collapsed. And the wreckage looked a lot like the life she left behind. I didn't plan to go back home. Not for good. Just to pick up a few things, some books, my old guitar, the jacket she always said made me look like a sad poet. But when I unlocked the door, I heard music. Not loud. Not joyful. Just something soft, looping from the studio upstairs. The room I hadn't entered since the last time I watched her break my heart. She was there. Sitting in the chair. No headset on. Just staring at the monitor, not moving, not typing, not crying. Just, still. When she heard me behind her, she didn't turn. She just said, "She's still in there, you know." I didn't ask who she meant. We both knew. Elira. Her better self. Her braver version. The one she couldn't bring herself to delete. "I can't look at her," she whispered. I made her everything I wanted to be. And she made everything I was, irrelevant. She finally turned then. Her face was pale, tired, not from sleeplessness, but from clarity. That kind of exhaustion you feel when denial finally lets go. "I lied," she said quietly. "I told him you were dead." "I know. I didn't say it to hurt you. I said it because I needed a story that let me feel free. And I was the villain in that story," I replied. "No," she shook her head. "You were the anchor. And I was the one trying to float away." We stood there in the quiet, ocean-sized silence stretching between us. "Why did you stop logging in?" I asked. Her voice cracked. "Because it stopped feeling like an escape. And started feeling like a grave." I looked at the screen. The garden still shimmered. Still perfect. Still untouched. But lifeless now. A ghost town built on fantasy. She motioned to the chair beside her. I sat. For the first time in weeks, we were side by side. Not talking. Just breathing. Together. And not. "I thought she was better than me," she said finally. "But I think I just liked her more because she didn't have to face consequences." I nodded slowly. She didn't have to lose anything. We sat in silence again. Then she looked at me. "I miss you. I miss who we used to be," I answered. She didn't argue. Because she missed them too. And they weren't coming back. She leaned forward. Opened the game. Typed in a few commands. A system prompt appeared. "Delete personal instance, our garden." She hovered her mouse over yes. Then stopped. "You sure?" I asked. "No," she admitted. "But maybe it's time." She clicked. The screen went black. Later, we stood at the front door. I had my bag over my shoulder. Keys in hand. She didn't cry. Didn't beg. She just placed something in my palm. A printed photo. The two of us, younger, arms wrapped around each other, standing outside the Oregon cabin. Her face lit up like the moon had kissed her. On the back, in her handwriting. If we ever get lost, come back here. I nodded. Turned the knob. Paused. Then looked at her one last time. She smiled. But not the Alira smile. Not the rehearsed one. Just a tired, quiet thing. Human. Real. As I stepped outside, the wind brushed my face like breath. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel deleted. I felt rewritten.